Hi, welcome back to some more expressions from Algebra 1. Um, Before we get going on adding on to the expressions, you may want to take a moment to pause the video and make sure that you can do the things that we learned from the very first section. And for that example, I've got this sequence. Make sure you can do these three items, and after you pause it and work it out, come back to the video, and in about 3 or 4 seconds on this video I will unveil my work for that. Okay, I hope you took the time to pause, excuse me, to pause and work that out. Here is my work for that. I have a little extra. And you should probably consider pausing this video so that you can now compare your work to what I have. The only thing you can't see here is I made a graph. It's down there. But the most important parts, can you write the expression? Can you make a prediction from the expression? After you've paused that and taken a look, we'll move on to the new part of writing expressions. Okay, I would suggest that you have a sheet of paper out and that you're taking notes on this video. We're going to think about writing expressions two new ways in this section. One is by looking at a pattern that you see in figures, and one is via words and sentences. What I'm going to do is start off with this, and then after we do that, we'll move on to that. And for this example, we're going to have a picture with kind of like toothpick segments. And there it is. So I look at this, and this little part is shaped with 3 of these segments. So n equals 1 means the first figure has 3 segments. The second figure, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 segments. 3 segments, 7 segments, and I bet you could do the counting for the rest, which means we end up with this sequence. So we're just getting this sequence by studying that pattern, and then I'm going to unveil a lot of this other stuff because this is really the things that we've been working on in the previous section. If you have a sequence, can you recognize a common difference? If you feel like it, could you write it into a table? Also, could you write it into a graph? I don't think I have that on this one, but you could do that. But then the most important thing, can you take that sequence using the common difference and write an expression? Now remember, as always, there's different expressions that you could write that are also correct, but this is probably the easiest one to do. The first term is always the plus. The common difference is always the multiplier by the n minus 1. But realize you can go a different way. And then once you have that expression, if I wanted to figure out, if I did 50 of these figures, which would take an awful lot of time, how many segments would be necessary for the 50th figure? Well, now you can take your expression, provided you built a good expression, and right there where you see that n, you replace it with a 50. Now notice how everything else is lined up perfectly. Being organized with your work is really going to help you in math. And so once I just replace the n with 50, because I would be going out to the 50th figure, I can go ahead and just use the math and the principles of your beautiful Princess PEMDAS. But notice in my steps, I'm always recopying everything from above and making one small move. In this step, when I went from here to here, all I did was the 50 minus the 1. When I went from here to here, all I did was the 40 times the 49. So if you stay very organized, you end up with one little task each step, and you end up crawling towards the answer, and the answer ends up correct. So the only difference between what we've learned here and what we learned in the previous section is now we had to study the figure to go ahead and get our sequence. Now we're going to take a look at writing expressions from words and sentences. So there's a note sheet available on the resources, and you could print that off if you'd like. You can also watch along, because I'll be using that note sheet through this video. And keep in mind, writing expressions from words and sentences, we're also going to get a decent amount of practice of that in ALEKS. All right, here's that sheet that you could print off from the lesson plans. The first part is kind of a bank of words, and this is not necessarily complete, but a bank of words that help you know what math symbolism to use. So for example, if I see the word sum or the phrase more than, I think of addition. If I see the word of or product, it's probably going to lead to multiplication. And you can read these, I don't need to read them to you, but you might want to build this for yourself, and if you're having trouble with this, write extra words that you run across that mean one of these operations. And I'm just going to show you my answers for these, just for these different expressions. And I'll just point out the keywords that would tell me. 7 more than X. Well, more than means 7 more than X. If I add 7 to X, I have 7 more than X. Keep in mind that we can go ahead and take addition and write it in a reverse order, and it's totally fine. Just like in number 2, when I see the keyword of, 1/3 of M, well, of is going to be part of my multiplication. It's a keyword, so 1/3 of M, and just like addition, multiplication can be written in the reverse order. So I could write this M times 1/3. Right? Decreased by, subtraction. And by the way, twice a number, twice a number. Now, subtraction is very dangerous, because if you wrote 2n minus 20, you can't reverse the order, cannot reverse the order of subtraction. S divided by 8, pretty self-explanatory. All right, this number 5 down here. The sum of C and 2, then divided by 3. When you see the sum of C and 2, that's telling you that that needs to happen before you go ahead and do the division. If you did C plus 2 divided by 3, that would be tempting, but incorrect. The total of M markers and C crayons. Well, when I'm going to total something up, it means I'm going to add it up. So there's a number up here, or there's a word up here now in the addition part that I didn't have in, total. So I just add that in there. If I had to add my markers and crayons, M plus C. And then at the bottom, these last two, this is nothing new, it's just more practice. You're going to just plug in an 8 to work out a value. You're going to plug in a 6 to work out a value. Same advice as I had earlier. Notice how I just make one little move each step, so that everything is copied down in order, and I just have one math calculation per step. The same thing over here. One little step each time. All right, so as we look back through what we've learned in this video, we're basically writing expressions from a pattern of figures, but we're also writing expressions from words. And this writing expression from words, if it seems like I went through this part very quickly, remember that we're going to get plenty of practice via homework and via ALEKS on this. See ya.